If you love movies and movie discussions, you've come to the right place. Who am I, you ask? I am The Wiz, and I'm here to review the 1966 drama Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, starring Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton, George Segal, and Sandy Dennis, directed by Mike Nichols in his directorial debut. Kim could not make it. Kim is not going to be on for a while. She has a tough road ahead of her at work, so she is going to step off for a while. And she will come back when she is ready. I don't have a timetable as to when that will be. Whenever she wants to come back, she is welcome to come back. Hope everything works well for Kim on that. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? This is the week that we did a bunch of Elizabeth Taylor movies. And Giant was one of the movies that she was more well known for, had more praise for her performances in. It wasn't one that she won an Oscar or got nominated for, but it's definitely a performance that when I hear of Elizabeth Taylor, they said that's one of her better movies. And when I came out of that movie going, it's good, but I don't know about great, I was kind of surprised. So I was like, okay, so maybe she's not as good as I've heard. Maybe her work hasn't stood out as much as maybe others. I don't know. So I was kind of surprised that that didn't really hit as well as I would have liked it to. But this is the movie that won her the Oscar. So I wanted to definitely check this movie out to cap the week off. So why don't we just get into it? Let's get into the review of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, directed by Mike Nichols. Before we do that, let's get into the plot. History professor George and her boozy wife Martha, both played by Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, return late one Saturday after a cocktail party at the home of their college president, which is Martha's father. Martha then says out of nowhere that she invited another couple, a newly appointed instructor by the name of Nick, who's played by George Segal, and his wife, played by Sandy Dennis, and they are going to entertain them, and they're going to, I guess, stay over the night. From this leads to a bunch of circumstances where the dysfunctional relationship between George and Martha stands out in front of this young couple and actually affects the young couple as well as time goes on. That is the story. So now that we got through the story, let's get to my 3 points. And my first point is the 4 actors are excellent in this movie. Taylor and Dennis are absolute standouts. There are literally 4 actors in this movie. I mean, there might be 2 who played a bartender and a waitress, but that's it. But these are the 4 actors that you have to deal with throughout the 2 hours and 15 minutes of this film. The entire plot is all done in dialogue. So then you need to have really good actors to play these parts to make it interesting, and man, does it work. These performances are great. Let's get to the men, which are George Segal and Richard Burton. They play their parts very well. I think Richard Burton does a great job of slipping into different modes of his character throughout the entire time of the film. The ramp up with Segal's character as to who he actually is as the movie goes on is also an interesting dynamic to sit through and watch, and I think he does a very good job on that too. But like I said, I think the women do a better job in this movie. Let's get to Sandy Dennis, who plays Honey in the film, which is Nick's wife. Now, the first one I want to talk about is Sandy Dennis' performance as Honey in this movie. She's the one that I kind of sympathize with the most, even though she's about as unlikable as the rest with some of the things that she does or she has done in the past. I definitely felt sorry for her because she just seems a little out of her depth. Like, she was not aware of what she was dealing with when marrying Nick and what she was going to have to deal with during this night of boozing and things like that. And she plays being drunk really well as well in this movie. She won the Oscar for this role, I believe, and I think it's deserved. She did a very good job in this movie. But the best performance is Elizabeth Taylor, bar none. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I watched Giant, and I'm like, why is she celebrated? She's good, but one of the best out? No. Now I see it. This was an amazing performance. This movie does a great job with all 4 characters, making you have a hard time where you want to pin down these characters. At one point, like, you think one character is the abused one and the other one is the abuser, and then it kind of flips, and then it flips again, and it goes into another dynamic, and the actors all do a great job of maintaining that dynamic flip, but the best one's Taylor, because Taylor is really the loudest and the showiest, but in the end, she's also the one that I think that I felt very sorry for at the end, which stunned me after the end of the movie, and I won't spoil what happens, but like at the end, you learn something about her, and you're like, oh my god. It kind of makes sense what's going on and why things are the way they are in this movie. And Taylor plays Martha's so believable that it just really resonated very well with her performance. So I really like Taylor in this movie. So I think Elizabeth Taylor and Sandy Dennis are standouts, but all four were really good in the movie. But my second point, and I've already mentioned it, is the shifting between who to love and hate. Throughout the film, the characters kind of shift dynamics. At first, you think that one person's the one being abused or being the abuser, and then it kind of flips, and then it flips again, and then it turns itself into something else where it does something a little messed up, and it kind of moves back, and then the entire movie shifts into something else about the entire relationship dynamic between Martha and George in this movie, to a point where you start believing that maybe they like it this way, maybe they're made for each other this way, and then it shifts again. That's the fascinating thing about this movie, is that you cannot pin down the characters until the end of the movie. You can't understand exactly who the characters are and what are they like until towards the end, because it does just a great job of making these characters more and more dynamic as the film goes on. This is buoyed by the performances of the film, but the screenplay does a really good job. I know this is based on a play by Edward Albee, and I've never watched or saw the play, so I don't have any experience with that. But just the way that the characters flow into different states and go into different dynamics and personalities, and they're all incredibly believable and incredibly entertaining and engaging throughout the entire film. So I really liked how the film flipped around on itself back and forth until the very end, when you finally realize what the truth is of what's going on. And maybe you can question whether that is the truth or not, but I think it is. It was just a great screenplay that showed off how these characters are and how they switch personalities and dynamics. And the third point is an intelligent story about dissatisfied people. And I think that's what the basics of the story is. All four of these people are essentially dissatisfied with their life and what they are doing. I think this is also true of Nick and Honey. Maybe less so of Honey, but definitely of Nick. You start to realize truths come out from all four of these people, that they've done some messed up stuff in the name of trying to have their best life, and things have not worked out. And instead of making all four of them be very sympathetic, they show the darker tones of making those decisions and makes them much more engaging and interesting characters in the end of this movie. Again, I think George is a very interesting character in this movie, but Martha, I think, is the most dynamic and I think the best of the characters in this movie, which is played really well by Elizabeth Taylor. But all four characters are really good, very interesting to watch, and it's definitely a movie that I would like to watch again to get more depths and layers out of it. That's the sneaky thing about this movie. It's almost 2.5 hours long. It's all talking. What makes it so satisfying and engaging is that the characters switch dynamics so much that it's interesting to watch, but it's never confusing because they flow it so well together. It's movies that do this sometimes, they switch dynamics but don't give a good reason as to why, or they don't exactly make it believable to the point where you sit there and go, oh yeah, I can definitely see how that is. It kind of makes it unbelievable, but not this movie. This movie does an incredible job shifting those dynamics and personalities to a point where it's utterly believable, and I absolutely loved watching this. So who do I recommend this for? I recommend this for people if you like intelligent, thoughtful dramas. Like I said, the film does a great job shifting the dynamics of all the characters. It is so well done that it's utterly believable as the movie goes on. So I definitely liked how intelligently done the movie is. I'd also recommend this for people if you want to see excellent performances. All four are great, but Elizabeth Taylor is the best in this movie. I think she was excellent, and now I finally get why people loved her as an actress. She's amazing in this movie. Who do I not recommend this for? I don't recommend this for people if you do not like discomfort in your films. Man, let me tell you, this film can get uncomfortable. I also put like cringe, but I'm not going to really put that there. The film wants you to sit in the discomfort of these characters, mainly the younger couple, and how they have to deal with this incredibly dysfunctional, very abusive relationship between the characters, and how utterly uncomfortable it is to be there. And you have to wallow in it for, I would say, about an hour and a half until all four characters are pretty much that in this movie. So if you don't like that, don't watch it, but I think you're missing a really good movie. Overall, I highly recommend this movie. This was a great movie. I really enjoyed this movie. Again, the performances are great. especially Elizabeth Taylor, and I think that the film is intelligently done with how they make the characters and then they shift personalities and traits and dynamics throughout the entire film. I don't want to say much more about that. I really think this is a film that if you haven't seen it, you should check it out right now. I think it's an excellent movie, especially if you like films that are dialogue-driven and are about characters. I will warn that it does get a little uncomfortable at times, but if you can stomach that, you're going to get a gem of a movie. So I highly recommend Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? An excellent movie. Now, if you want my full review on this movie, you can go to my website at IamTheWiz.com. You'll have my full written review right on the site, along with a link to the video that has this review that you've just listened to. Thank you for listening to this review. If you want to know what we're reviewing in the next couple days, you can look on the screen right now to see what's coming up next. If you liked what you heard, go ahead and leave a like on this video. If you want to discuss your opinion on the film or the review itself, please leave a comment. And if you want to hear more, subscribe to the channel. Thank you again for listening. I will talk to you next time.